of weeks ago, Don Comtois, Don Morin, Rob, and I traveled all over Bay City taking pictures of things that our society has and where they're located, and we just want to share some of these with you. So Don Morin's going to talk about these pictures.
Okay. Here, this picture is taken at the Toy and Fire Truck Museum out on Patterson, where we have the Amosita, the large pleasure boat in the back. That is the second oldest surviving boat from Bay City. It was shipped out as a knockdown kit and assembled behind the French Embassy in Washington, D.C. The next generation of the family took it to Woods Hole, Massachusetts. The third generation took it to North Carolina. An article was published in Wooden Boat magazine that goes out all over the world with a subtext article about the kit boat industry in Bay City, Michigan. And Bob Rosa pointed it out to us, and there was some correspondence took place with the owner, and just saying, hey, we're a historical society in Bay City. Neat that you got this story published about your family pleasure craft. And he says, well, I hope you're sitting down. He said, the reason I got this published, I'm the last of the family that has the time, the energy, or the money to take care of great-grandpa's boat. And I think she needs to go home. And so with a lot of fundraising, it started out as a one-year project, and what we didn't know was the gentleman's health wasn't too good. And the time frame kept shortening. So from January to early summer, it went from 1 year to a couple months. And with a lot of help of people around town and bird dogging, a lot of fundraising and so forth, we were able to raise the funds to send Bob and Rick Mixter as a videographer to North Carolina, and a long-haul trucker that hauled pleasure yachts said, I'll do the job for wholesale just to say I hauled a boat that was over 100 years old, or nearly, it was 99 at that point. And so they went to North Carolina. The boat was in the water being used, and they had to be motored 15 miles to the nearest pullout and have the barnacles scraped and loaded on the trailer. And there's some real cool video we have of it for maybe another evening sometime, of it going through the Smoky Mountains and all the traffic passing this vintage pleasure yacht coming to Bay City. It arrived here, and the gentleman stipulated that we need to get him here to show him what we intended to do with the boat and where we might be putting it. And so we flew him in, and the boat was readied at Skipper Bud's, where it would stay for a year. And as it hung in the slings, and Don introduced the Defoe family that were all too young at the time to have even known Harry Defoe. They weren't even born yet, right? They were there present to see some of their great-grandfather's work, and the boat was relaunched into the river, and just prior to dropping it in the river, the gentleman was having some more health problems, and we were able to get him a wheelchair, and so he was setting for a photo shoot in front of the boat hanging in the slings, and I believe it was maybe Don and Dave brought out a card table with something heaped up with covered with meat wrapping paper, and set it down in front of Mr. Baxter. And he says, well, what do we got? We're going to have cake and ice cream, and somebody make a cake that looks like a boat. And they pulled the meat wrap off, and it was a model of the boat. And he was giving us family photographs, home movies, and he had the blueprints. But we couldn't ask for the blueprints. So all we had were 2 snapshots of the boat. And one of our members that's not here tonight, that's a model builder that has built some of the other models we have out at our museum store, with a length and a width of the boat and 2 photographs, he built a model of the boat and scaled it. And so we were able to later package it up and ship it to his home. He wasn't able to take it with him on the plane. But the next day, we were going to give him some other tours around town. And the phone rang at Don's, and Mr. Baxter was reviewing a lot of history with Don in his man cave. And the phone rang. I picked up the phone because I was nearest the phone. And a lady said, I saw the news on TV 12 about an Eric Baxter in town, and I think I might be related to him. And do you know how I could get a hold of him? And I said, well, he's sitting next to me. Hang on. And I put the phone down a bit, and I said, Eric, there's a lady on the phone that thinks she's related to you. And he says, we don't have any relation between the Smoky Mountains or past the Smoky Mountains. And I said, well, she's pretty insistent. And he said, okay. So he took the phone, and he gets chatting with her for a minute or so. And then finally he says, oh, I can't recall the lady's first name, but Janet or whatever. Oh, Uncle Joe's daughter. She lived in Saginaw. She had married a doctor out on the East Coast, and gradually he took assignments at various hospitals and was working in Saginaw. And so she wanted to pick him up and take him to lunch, and said, well, and I'll take him to the airport. So he said, well, do you mind if we skip the rest of the tour you were going to give of Bay City? Of which we did. She came, picked him up. She met with he met with her cousin and her husband kind of reviewed some of the medical issues that he was dealing with, and sent him to Johns Hopkins, where they found how he was being cross-medicated and got him onto a healthy path. And the bottom line, that this thing could be a great movie. The bottom line at the end of the deal was that there were other family members that said, geez, you gave great-grandpa's boat away. And he says, yeah, but it saved my life. These are some artifacts from the Jupiter when the Jupiter caught fire in the location right near where the Edson is now. These are some of the artifacts we have at the Fire Truck Museum. That was the flag off the ship. There's a fire helmet, and below you see the large letters. That's a large steel section that probably weighs 1,000 pounds that was cut off the transom with the name Jupiter on it. That's out at the Fire Truck Museum. This is one of the windows out of the pilot house, and as you can see, it looks kind of wrinkly. It's a laminate glass, 2 layers of glass with some kind of plastic in between, so it's shatterproof, but the heat had cracked it like that, and so we've got that mounted out at the Fire Truck Museum. This is a range light tower that was, I believe, over near on Weddock Road. Is that right, Dave?
By
Etna Cement, yes, right by Etna Cement, by the railroad track. If you went into Essexville and then went out toward Weddock, that was a tower. It's 2 12-foot sections. It's dismantled here. It's stacked over at the Fire Truck Museum. There was a young fella came into our first store and museum we had out at the mall, and he said he had this tower behind his house, and he bought a house, and this tower was in the backyard, and there were some big bushes growing through it, and he had little kids, and he said, I'd like to get rid of it. And he says, I've been told it came from somewhere along the Saginaw River. And so we verified what it was. And so through some help that him and his father knew some guys, they were able to disassemble it and take it down out of his yard and deliver it to us. And we were able to put it out temporarily at the Fire Truck Museum outside. We hope to get it reassembled someday and maybe be able to put it out by the lighthouse somewhere. This is a lifeboat. You can see some of the lettering there where Don's pointing at it. It was from a passenger steamer, the Western States, of which was built about when? By whom, Don? Dave? Al?
I'm guessing around 1902 or 3.
1902 or 1903. And was it built here or elsewhere? Built in Detroit, okay. But was it scrapped here?
Well, it was after the DNC line folded up in the early 50s. They took it to Tawas, and it was going to be a floating museum, floating hotel.
Oh, I remember that as a kid now, yes.
And that didn't pan out. It, lasted a year or so. And then it was being scrapped and burned. And then they towed the hull here, and the hull was scrapped in one of the slips on the west side.
Okay, so we have, that's another artifact we have. And these are the two masts off the Iroquois, the Ojibwe, that was originally built. Defoe built two freighters, the Hutchison and the Marshall, in, is it 2 summers ago already now? We went to Canada and asked for some artifacts off the Hutchison at the scrapyard in Port Colborne, Ontario. And what we're lifting there is the steering pole that sticks out on the front of the ship so that they can better see where the vessel is headed when they're looking forward from the pilot house. These items are laying over at the Edson.
An interesting thing, when we went over, we also got the stack logo. I don't know if we have that in the slide, but the stack logo is at the museum. Well, we got this stuff. We got Carl Jan put it on he's a professional truck driver. We loaded it on his trailer, and we were almost to the bridge, and we realized we did not have any paperwork. We forgot to pick it up. But we got there, and the guy, the border guard, he stepped out of his little shed there, and he's looking like, what in the world do you have on that trailer? So we had some correspondence with the company, and we showed him that. He said, okay, but he just shook his head wondering where in the world they're going to take all that scrap iron. But we have it.
Yes, we should give thanks here. Carl, would you stand, please? Carl has been all over the eastern half of the country helping us with all the, as Don says, we didn't start collecting stamps that we could put in a folder in the closet, so everything takes 2 men and a boy in Carl's truck and trailer to haul around the country to acquire a lot of the artifacts we have. And thank you, Carl. It's your life's passion, we know. So, and in Carl's spare time, he reenacts lighthouse keepers. and operates Spectacle Reef Light, so he can give you tours out there too. This is a Bay City kit boat. We've acquired a couple of them. This one was a 19-foot plywood cruiser. We acquired this as it was put together here, and there's no intention to ever finish this. All the parts are in the crates. The mahogany cutout sections for the cabin roof. The window glass is in crates packed in straw. The toilet is in another crate packed in straw. The rest of the screws, the shafts, the rudders, propellers, all the parts. So this is a way to show how kit boats were built here in Bay City. This one is plywood, but the same design also, we might have a picture here. They also built the same model in mahogany.
And this is at Skipper Bud's.
These are all at Skipper Bud's. There's a lean-to shed. You can see it here. And there's our lifeboat that we've used in parades. Okay, next slide. Yeah, here's the mahogany one that came out in New York. That was another kit that shows a different style of construction, the same boat, but with a different style of construction with the mahogany planking instead of plywood. Don, you want to comment on?
what I'm holding here is called a ship's knee, where the frame of the ship goes up to the deck beams. These knees were put under there to hold the deck beams. This is off of the Sacramento. It was a historic treasure, maritime treasure, the only one in the United States that you could actually see how these ships were built. And the boilers, the engines, everything was still on it. And the city deemed it not necessary to save an old piece of wooden hull.
This is a tabletop. You can see a stack of them over there to the left side of the screen. These were tabletops that we helped decorate the old Kingfish restaurant on the river there right next to St. Lawrence Brothers. When it was sold and went under new ownership, the new owners didn't have any use for the tabletops and they wanted to sell them all, so we agreed to a certain number that we would buy. And then we, because we had helped contribute to the decorations on them, we were able to give them pictures and they were able to copy or blow some of them up. This one was a postcard that was blown up. And when we went back to pick them up, they had another stack there that they were going to throw in a dumpster. And we said, well, what if we just haul them away? Is it the same difference to you? So we paid for, I don't know, maybe a half a dozen or so. And then we took a dozen. And in a very short period of time, we were able to sell the tiki bar style ones to people that wanted them for their patios, and we recuperated our money. And the majority of the rest of them there depict Bay City history. We're going to sort through those again and do a double check, and we might be taking a few of those. There's a flea market they went to back in June at Port Huron, and there's going to be another flea market down in St. Clair Shores next month. So we're continually sorting through what really pertains, but oftentimes somebody will give us something that they'll say, well, here, you find either a home for it or if it's something you can sell to help operate your ongoing operations, go ahead. This is, obviously it says lunch. It was from Frenchie's. Whitey's. Get it straight. They were right next to each other at the mouth of the river. And they had obviously a lunch counter there, and it's an old neon sign. And so we're going to get that back in operation. And I understand there's a way with, instead of doing the neon, that they have an LED type lighting that's cheaper to run and cheaper to rebuild the sign and get it relit. And we had a lady that was here a year ago or two that it was her family had that lunch stand and the boat dock and the fish livery out there.
Those lights, go back and look at the lights. Go back next to, okay. Those lights you see under the lunch sign, those fluorescent lights, those are out of the pilot house from the Jupiter. So we do have a number of things from the Jupiter. Wait a minute. Okay, here's some of the other things we have. All that lath you see to the right, that all came from the lighthouse. And one of the things that I'm holding there, when they bulldozed the Sacramento to pieces, I filled my car up many times with the wood. That decking there is pine decking off of the out of the engine room, and what I did, I put some of it on little boards like that, and when we went to schools to do talks, we lay it down. We'd say, you are walking across an 1890s ship deck, and man, these kids, they would like they're walking on eggs. They're afraid to step on it. No, walk on it, you ain't gonna hurt it. And they just thought that was the coolest thing. So we do things with kids to make them interested in.
These items that the last batch items are out at another free warehouse that is out at a stone dock on some, was it Fisher?
Yeah.
Fisher Dock. It's just south of Bay Harbor Marina, and they've given us some storage there. It's probably the dirtiest storage in the world because it's a stone dock, but we pick and choose what gets put out there, but the price is right.
One of the other interesting things, you see that shelf in the back and that thing that kind of looks like a skull and a body. Actually, what that is from the old interurban bridge. I don't know exact year it was, but the interurban was coming from Saginaw to Bay City, and they would speed up to get across the bridge. Well, the bridge was open, and it went off with the bridge. And we were down by there about when the water would go real low looking for treasures. And that's an insulator off of that bridge.
Yes, I have those planks now. When I have groups of kids, I always bring it out. And as corny as it sounds, they love jumping on it, walking on it, that sort of thing. So we're going to take a break in just a few minutes. And the second half is Don Comtois is going to be talking about, his favorite pictures. Some of you guys know Ron Bloomfield, who was once in charge of the Bay County Historical Museum, and he published a couple of these little books. And there's one book that's called Legendary Locals. And there's a picture over here. I'll show you in just a second. But Don Comtois is in this book, and he's giving this woman an award. Don is in high school in 1980 something, Don? But he was in high school, and he was awarding this woman for working with the Bay County Historical Society. So we'll be hearing about Don later. But Don Comtois has been involved in history his entire life. You are history, and good history, good history.
Like Tim said, Saginaw River Reminiscing, I've got this literally hundreds of photographs and stuff from along the river over the years. Okay, let's get started. Here's the 3rd Street Bridge, and one of the grain boats coming down from Saginaw. I thought it was kind of cool, like it was going to pull right up onto the bridge. Okay. The Island Princess was a ferry built by Defoe. It was up in the Straits of Mackinac. It was built in 73 and rebuilt in 88. I believe it was an all-aluminum hull that was built. Okay. Here we see an LCI landing craft. A number of these were built at Defoe. My neighbor actually sailed on these, and he said they used to have the ramps they put on here and then go down when they get into the shallower water. And he said what they would do is on top of them, it was longer out, and they would have rockets on there, and they would fire them off as the men were going onto the shore, so it would keep the enemy's heads down so they could at least get on the shore. Okay. During the war years, every available manufacturing company that had anything of value was turned into a war production plant. This is Baker Perkins. You see they're lifting a whole bow section. Baker Perkins was in Saginaw, and they put it on a flatbed, and they would take it down River Road and take it directly to the shipyard. And then what they would do is they would lift it up and put it in place and weld it all in one piece. Okay. One of the other companies in Saginaw, also like Baker Perkins built these deck houses, but this other company would build the bigger deck houses, and of course being too big, they'd put them on barges and take them down the river and then bring them to Defoe. They'd pick them up, they'd set them on the hull and weld them in place. Defoe, because of the rollover process, was turning out more hulls than any shipyard on the lake, on the United States. The only disadvantage was come November, they can't go anywhere. Here we see Baker Perkins. Here's the bow sections being welded up. You can see the framing on there. And the gentleman that gave me, let me copy the originals, said that the bows were made extra heavy and extra thick because they were going to be used for ramming. If there was a sub, they wouldn't bother wasting their munitions. They just ram it. Okay, here's this bow section for the first 1,000-foot vessel built on the Great Lakes. They could have built more, but they couldn't get it through the railroad bridge in Essexville. This is the bow thruster for that bow section. Okay. This is a shot of one of many that I have of the shipyard itself, but this is in the drafting room. These are half models and blueprint cabinets all over the place. It's a shame. These are called slabs, or what they would do is, you can see here, they would put a bar through there, and they'd put a piece of metal down, and then they'd take a sledgehammer and tunk it so that it would hold tight, so they could either bend or they could just weld. One of the floor sections in that, the big building down there, had actually welded the whole layout for deck houses for those destroyer escorts. This is the same way that the Wheeler shipyard, but when they built the steel ships, they had, they called it the slab floors, and they would put these like dogs in each one of these squares, and then they would take the hot metal and they would just bend it right around. So that the technology that never grew old. Okay. This is one of the, in the machine shop, one of the big presses that would actually bend the metal to certain degrees, whatever they want. One of these, the gears just plain wore right out. And as the guy told me, the builder's plates were still on these machines. So it was from Buffalo, New York. So they wrote to Buffalo, to this plant, and to expect they could get another gear. Well, a couple weeks went by, and they got a letter from the Buffalo Historical Society and said, that place has been out of business for 40 years. Now, if you've got anything to builder's plates, we would love to have them. So Mr. Defoe got so upset, they took it over to, I believe it was Industrial Works, and they made a pattern for him. Here we see one of the Goderich outbound through the 3rd Street Bridge, and of course the City Hall in the background, the old Winona Hotel. And this bridge was you could really tell because it had a really unique rail on it.
Now, when you look at the old bit, every bridge railing is different.
Yeah.
The last of that railing was down in Stenders.
I don't know if that one was, or was it the Belinda Street Bridge? Anyway, there might be some of it still down there. This was a grain boat from the grain fleet that played the Saginaw River for a long time.
John, where did they load the grain?
Pardon?
Where did they load the grain?
The grain in Carleton at that elevator, or in downtown Saginaw. Dave, what was the name of that dock downtown in Saginaw?
Oh, there was Carleton and Zilwaukee.
Zilwaukee, okay.
Yeah, Farmville and Zilwaukee and Wicks and Carleton.
Okay.
Tell them about when your bike's on the...
Oh, yeah. What's cool, you can see the cutaway on the bridge where it would swing shut. When we were kids, you could hear those whistles blow. Man, they were so distinctive. And boy, you'd ride your bike like crazy either to the 3rd Street Bridge or to the Belinda Street Bridge. So you could ride across as it was opening them up, and your bike would go like at an angle. The guy up there, you kids, you're crazy, you're going to get yourself killed. Didn't bother us.
And he couldn't get to us because he had to open the bridge, and by the time the bridge closed, we were gone.
Yep.
We were doing it too, Nancy.
Yeah. Okay. This building here, this Court Defoe, this building here was probably one of the oldest ones at the plant. What they would do is they would build these steel hulls of yachts, the big yachts, and they would bring them in, and then they would winch them up into this building, and it was called the finishing shed, and they would then finish the yachts, and then a lot of pictures see the yachts being launched coming out of the thing. Here we see the Jackson being converted to a self-unloader. What's interesting on that is one of the guys. There was this one being done here in Defoe, and then there was one being done, I think it was in Wisconsin. And Defoe had this one finished before the deadline date and with no problems. Well, they did have one problem when they were testing it out. One of the hydraulic hoses got caught and it sheared it right off. And Jim Gerger, who was one of the founders of our organization, had the contract for like a couple times a week. He had to go take pictures of what was happening. And he said, if you don't think a hose about, I think it was 1.5 inch hose, could put out hydraulic oil, he said, holy smokes. But they finished this, and it was the endless belt loop system, and they had an old steam winch. They converted it to compressed air, and they put a hole in the side, and they ran the cable, and they pulled that whole belt system through in a matter of a couple hours. So Defoe did have good workers who knew what they were doing. Okay, this is one of the last conversion jobs that they were doing there on Herbert C. Jackson. Yeah, for self-unloading. There's a Herbert Jackson there. Okay. This is the hot oil barge, Hannah 5101. For the last vessel or anything built there at the yard. And it's kind of cool. You look at them, the early stuff, and they used the same thing. They used these big wooden posts to hold it up with L brackets welded, and the way that they did the cribbing underneath, all of the same over the years. So there's the stern of it open. This was 76, the last year the yard was in business. Okay. Here's one of the Sandbar going through the 3rd Street Bridge. I love this picture. It's the Joseph Youngs, and I titled it "In Days Gone By." This kids, they would, being there, sitting on the piling, watching a freighter go through, which is now almost non-existent. And there she goes. You can see the Belinda Street Bridge right up in here. The Joseph Young going through both the old and new Independence to the Belinda Street Bridge. There and there. Okay. They brought the Nicolay in 74 to repower it. And the guy was telling me Defoe wanted to take that engine out because it was the last of the old triple expansion engines, but they would have had to do some cutting on the superstructure, but the Coast Guard wouldn't let them do it, and the company didn't want it. So this is the big cylinder coming out in pieces. This is Rice. This was the last conversion job because there is the hot oil barge there. And what they did there was they took all the tubing out of the boilers. Okay. This is the engine room. Before it was remodeled, I asked the guy, what's going to happen with that? He says, there's a line of people waiting before you. Okay. I thought I'd ask. Okay. Here are they removing the boiler tubes. This is the engine. It's going to be repowered. Triple expansion, high pressure, medium and low pressure. One of the Ogley Bay Norton boats, these boats would go up to Saginaw, unload pig iron, reload scrap iron, bring it down lakes and get it reprocessed, and then come back up the river. These were a very unique boat no matter where they were on the lakes. If you couldn't see the name, it was a crane boat. Okay, this is Miss Bay City, one of the early sightseeing boats. But what's interesting, right back here, is the old Front Range light. This is the S.M. Stevenson and Yo Klutz slip. It's now Pier 7. That's Mr. Junkus up there. This boat was brought in, it had a load of coal on it. And so the Captain Kate brought it there and told Mr. Klutz, well, your coal's here. He says, well, how come you're not unloading it? And now Mrs. Junkus told me this, and she said, the captain said, no, my job is to deliver the coal. Your job is to unload it. They got into quite a heavy argument, and it ended up going to court. So what happened was the captain won out. By then, the boat had sunk, and the boat was practically worthless. So they took the coal off, and there it sat for years. And they ended up taking a crane and taking the whole thing out of the slip so the slip could be used again. It was scrapped in the 50s. But I don't know the exact date. Mr. and Miss Junkus lived in a boathouse in the Klutz slip, and it was called Palomine, right up there on there. And there was a couple other ones in there, and they actually lived in it year-round. And he was a painter, house painter, interior painting. And she told me, I said, wasn't it awful cold in the wintertime? Oh, yeah, she said, it could get very cold. But she said ice skating was fantastic. But you can see some of the rowboats. And she gave me a whole mess of pictures like this of the Klutz slips with different types of boats in them. Okay. Here's one of the cement boats heading out through the Belinda Street Bridge with the famous Kellers outbound behind her. This is the Yank Canuck, 1972, passing through the 3rd Street Bridge. But they carried when they came in, they carried pulp, these huge rolls of pulp paper, like that high. And then they took them up, and they had a warehouse where both the Bay City Times and the Saginaw News used that same type of print. This is Lafayette and Water Street, the former site of the Marhar Construction Company. Now it's Skipper Bud's. Okay. The W.F. White going through the Belinda Street Bridge. What's interesting, the boats coming up the river now are going out. You could almost walk from one bridge to the other. They go so slow. And I've seen times when these old boats, they would go flying through there like it was nothing, just go right through. Of course, U.S. Steel boats were gray, and they always had the silver stack with the black band around the top. This is the O.S. McFarland. Somehow, I don't know, it ended up in some type of a lawsuit. So wherever it was, they took it and they brought it up here by Saginaw, and they tied it up. And this guy told me that they were looking for it, and they asked all the ship captains if they ever seen it to report where it was at. Nobody ever reported it. So finally it was found, and they towed her off to the scrapyard. Okay, this is a piece of history, and sometimes you come across that's fantastic. It said Frank Biggins, or in French, Bigin, employed at the steel department of Wheeler and Company shipyard, had his right hand, of course here it shows the left, but his right hand smashed under a steam hammer yesterday afternoon. He may regain partial use of his hand. My dad had told me that, his grandpa Bigin had his hand mangled at the shipyard. And, and I have the picture, and there it is. And then I was going through the newspapers in the 1890s, and there was an article about him in there. So that was kind of cool. I got to tie some family history in. Okay. These are old ads out of the newspapers that I would photograph. We're going to be selling a lot of these. They're copies at the store. People have bought them and framed them and did other things with them. You've got to remember, this was before passenger trains were coming into Bay City. So the only way to go up the shore would be like the Saginaw, Alpena, and Mackinac. Then they had the Coral Lock, that was out at Oak Grove. They were just steamers to take rides on. But they were called the shoreline boats. And there was a lot of them that sailed out of Bay City and Saginaw. Okay. That's it? Okay. Like I said, I could go on. There's more and more, but I just thought we'd do something kind of easy tonight.